Hello, and thank you in advance for taking the time to listen to this presentation. My name is Jason Wilde, and I'm National Sales Manager at Paragon Bank. So for today, I'm going to explore the key developments in the buy-to-let market and what landlords can expect during 2021 and beyond. I'll also cover the very emotive subject of cladding, giving an overview on the latest RICS guidance regarding external wall fire reviews. We'll take a look at the latest landlord trends and tenant demand in a post-COVID world. And finally, we'll take a look at some of the opportunities in emerging markets that are out there for landlords, yourselves as intermediaries, and us as lenders. I can't think of anywhere better to start off than discussing the stamp duty extension in England and Wales. The introduction of the stamp duty holiday in June 2020 was a welcome relief for house buyers, and many were surprised that this also included relief on buy-to-let and second homes. This certainly gave the market a significant uplift in the most uncertain of times. However, as we entered lockdown 3, it became abundantly clear that there were significant delays building within most areas of the process. Intermediaries, lenders, surveyors, conveyancing and local authorities all being impacted in one way or another by a combination of remote working and homeschooling, all of which was putting significant pressure on transactions to complete before the 31st of March deadline. The extension and subsequent taper relief until the end of September has been welcomed by most within the industry. We've already seen a number of lenders within both buy-to-let and residential markets taking confidence from this with reduced pricing and increased loan-to-values. In fact, a recent survey of our own pre-completion pipeline concluded that 40% of borrowers say they are likely to buy another property as a direct result of the stamp duty extension. 2021 is also the final year of Section 24. Residential finance costs, which has been phased in over a 4-year period from April 17. From this year, landlords will no longer be able to offset any of their finance costs from their gross rental profit. Now, it goes without saying that many landlords who hold properties in their personal names have seen a notable increase in their tax liability as a result of this fiscal policy change. This has also been a key driver in the popularity of limited company ownership amongst landlords. From the 1st of April this year, all overseas buyers purchasing property in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be required to pay an additional 2% stamp duty surcharge. Now, this applies to all non-UK residents and will be in addition to the existing 3% surcharge that applies to purchase of additional homes. To be classified as a UK resident, applicants will need to have spent at least 6 months in the UK in either the year before or the year after they purchased the property. Now, April is certainly the month for changes within the private rental sector, and from April this year, all existing tenancies will need to comply with electrical safety standards, which was introduced for new tenancies on the 1st of June last year. This will cover all fixed electrical parts of the property, such as the wiring, sockets, light fittings, and consumer unit. Landlords must obtain a report, usually an EICR, an electrical installation condition report, which explains its outcomes and any investigation or remedial works that are required. The landlords must supply a copy of this to the tenant within 28 days of the inspection or to any new tenant before they occupy the premises. If the report shows that remedial work or further investigation is required, the landlord must complete this work within 28 days or any shorter period if detailed as being necessary in the report. Landlords must then provide written confirmation to the tenant that the required works have been completed within 28 days. This regulation also requires landlords to have the electrical installation inspected and tested at intervals of no longer than every 5 years. And whilst this is more work for the landlords, it can only be a good thing to improve the quality and, more importantly, the safety of dwellings within the private rental sector. New minimum EPC proposals. Now, the government has a target of making the UK's housing stock carbon neutral by 2050, but clearly private rental homes are first in line of sight. There are proposals, and they are just proposals at the moment, to raise the minimum EPC rating for rental properties from an E to a C rating. This is planned to be a phased approach by achieving improvements to new tenancies by 2025 and all tenancies from 2028. To help landlords meet these targets, the government has proposed increasing the landlord cap. Now, as it stands, landlords are allowed to offer certain homes with a lower rating than Band E if they spend £3,500 every 5 years to improve the property's energy efficiency. However, this minimum spend will increase to £10,000 if or when the Band C rules are implemented. Just over 38.3% of private rental homes in England have an energy performance rating of C or above, and that's compared to 35.5% in the owner-occupied space. Worryingly, however, that means that we're looking at the fact that 6 out of 10 homes are below this level, and they will require further investment going forward. Despite the improvements made over the past 25 years, the very nature of the private rental stock means it has a greater challenge compared to other tenures. Just under half properties in the private rental sector, dwellings, they're built pre-war, whilst a quarter are mid-terrace, which traditionally can be difficult to generate tangible improvements. Concerns have also been raised about previous technologies such as solar panels not delivering the expected returns. We expect to see more lenders enter this space with a combination of green products and incentives for landlords to help improve their properties. Now, as a result of the extension of the provisions in the Coronavirus Act 2020, from the 29th of August last year, landlords have been required to provide 6 months' notice to their tenants in most circumstances, including Section 21 notices. The period during which the extended notices are required was originally due to end on the 31st of March, but has now been extended to the 31st of May this year. In some serious cases, the required notice periods have returned to their pre-COVID timescales. As an example, this would be notices in relation to antisocial behaviour or domestic abuse. Rent arrears are also deemed an acceptable reason to seek a possession order, but the notice period is dependent on how many months' rent is unpaid. I'm sure many of you listening to this presentation have encountered issues with cladding over the past couple of years, predominantly with confusion regarding lenders as to what they do and what they don't require when an EWS1 form comes into it. The latest RICS guidance, which were published in March, give clear guidance to surveyors where they should request this document before completing their reports. This is due to be implemented from 1st of April this year, but where possible, lenders were encouraged to adopt this approach earlier. A full copy of the guidelines will be available on our stand during today's event, so feel free to drop in and take a copy if it's of any interest. In summary, for buildings over 6 stories, an EWS1 should be requested where there is cladding or curtain wall glazing on the building, or there are balconies which stack vertically above each other, and either both the balustrades and decking are constructed with combustible materials such as timber, or the decking and balconies are directly linked by this combustible material. For buildings of 5 or 6 stories, an EWS1 should be requested where there is a significant amount of cladding on the building. Now, approximately 1/4 of the elevation is classed as being a significant amount, or the presence of aluminium composite material, which is present on Grenfell, metal composite material, or high pressure laminate on the building, or similar to before, where there are balconies which stack vertically and decking and balconies are constructed or directly linked by combustible materials. For buildings of 4 stories or fewer, an EWS1 form should be requested where there are ACM, MCM or HPL panels on the building. And it is worth pointing out that metal cladding and ACM, MCM are very similar visually. So if metal cladding is present, the valuer should confirm with the building owner or managing agent in writing that they are not an ACM, MCM cladding type. If confirmation cannot be obtained, an EWS1 inspection should be requested. It's no secret that the impact of COVID will be felt over generations. And despite this and the pending changes within the buy-to-let sector, recent research carried out by BDRC suggests that 16% of landlords intend on buying an average of 2.2 properties in the next 12 months. Despite initial press reports suggesting that people are deserting areas in favour of more rural locations, the research confirms that 68% of landlords will continue to target property within urban areas, with tenant demand expected to remain strong as we ease our way out of lockdown. Now, the most important attributes landlords are looking for in future purchases are fairly traditional. Unsurprisingly, potential for rental yield, adding value, and overall capital gains are significant drivers for landlords. However, when looking at the most important characteristics for tenants, along with a property being close to public transport, many were now focusing on properties with a garden or an outdoor space or even communal outdoor areas. Understandably, a property which is suitable for home working, including faster and more reliable broadband connection speeds, is viewed as being very important as many people will continue to work remotely. I mentioned earlier that tenant demand is expected to remain strong, with 32% of landlords reporting increase in demand during the final 3 months of 2020. Incidentally, this is the highest level since Q1 in 2016 and represents a 29% increase on the previous quarter last year. This is also a 25% increase on the same period in 2019. So the signs are there that tenant demand remains strong and is actually growing. So what opportunities are out there at the moment? Well, firstly, as a result of the 3% stamp duty surcharge in 2017, there are a significant number of 5-year loans coming to an end, with just over £1 billion of 5-year fixed rate business written in March 2017. Therefore, the opportunity for product switches or remortgage is very high at the moment. Further advances in capital raising for property improvements is likely to increase if the new EPC proposals are implemented. With Section 24 being fully implemented this year, there will be a number of landlords facing yet another increase in their taxable incomes. This has driven a demand for limited company borrowing, with Howden's recently reporting there were just under 42,000 new limited companies set up last year. Thankfully, there are now a significant amount of lenders able to offer funding solutions, whether it be a simple SPV, subsidiary, trading companies, or even offshore companies. As a result of the Section 24, this is also driving the number of landlords looking to incorporate their portfolios from personal name through to limited company ownership, whether taking advantage of the extended stamp duty deadline or looking to benefit from Section 162 incorporation relief. There has never been a better time as an intermediary to form working relationships with accountants and tax specialists. At Paragon, we've had a number of £5 million plus portfolio incorporations which have been introduced to brokers by an accountant or tax advisor. Continued demand is expected for bridging finance or lenders offering refurbishment products to cater for borrowers looking to add more value to property. This also includes conversion of properties from single self-contained units through to high-yielding HMOs and multi-unit blocks. There are also great opportunities out there with semi-commercial properties. Typically a shop with say 2 or 3 flats above. The secondary high street has unfortunately been decimated over the past year, so there is a great opportunity for landlords and lenders to look at funding options which will allow conversions back to full residential use. With the uncertainty surrounding Brits being able to take foreign holidays this year, the demand for staycations is at an all-time high, so the holiday let market is expected to see strong growth this year, with more lenders looking to explore this market. We've seen an unusual situation where a number of people become accidental savers during lockdown, with recent news reports reporting that over 6 million people now fall into this category. With the possible rent returns available in this market and tax breaks compared to standard buy-to-let, more and more borrowers are expected to explore this sector. And finally, data released by Knowledge Bank recently showed that the most popular search within buy-to-let was for first-time landlords, appearing in the top 5 sought-after terms for 10 consecutive months. Again, this is likely to be a result of borrowers being able to save more during lockdown and the fact that property is still viewed as being a relatively safe investment. So I'd fully expect this market to grow over the coming months. That's all from me at Paragon. I thank you once again for taking the time to listen to this presentation, and I look forward to fielding any of your questions. Thank you.